happened was a dismissal of the army commander, and the promotion of one who had the call out to be arrested became Zambia army commander. So you can imagine he's the one superintending. He knows he cannot survive outside President Hakainde Hichilema. And he has a terrible history. In 2015, he was fired, from the Zambia army for similar misconduct. And then he led something that is cowardly in the vocabulary of the army. When our soldiers, 300 of them, were caught in Sierra Leone in peacekeeping mission, he disappeared on the soldiers, something you can never do. A general never leaves his soldiers. Read about it, why he is not respected even in the circles of the military. That's the one. And that's why you see this misconduct. He can say, I will exterminate and fumigate small-scale miners. Without even batting his lead, he can say that. He can deploy military personnel in polling stations, in totaling centers. He can direct them to chase our people, chase everyone, monitors, observers, party agents, and they can supervise the changing of elections for President Hakainde Hichilema. We are on the borderline of a coup with such an army commander because he's taken over the democratic and electoral process to himself and is trying to install the president. That relationship between the two is extremely dangerous. We've seen it play out in Africa. We've seen it, even the tensions in Zimbabwe, is as a result of a civic leader collaborating with the military in illegal processes. And they create a symbiotic relationship where one can't fire the other because they are afraid of each other. That's not our country. Our country is a democracy. Our country is one that has clear separation between the military, a respected entity. If I have found anything Zambians even get annoyed talking about, is talk about our Zambia defense and security services. Even when the police are rogue, the people who side with the police, that's how much our country respects our defense and security forces. So to have a fella, one person, for his personal ambition, not even qualified, use the Zambia security intelligence, form a shadowy group, harass people. And then you have this army commander, corruption accused, and he's even committed more offenses, grabbed people's gold, the small-scale miners, that there's an investigation against him, up to 500 kg of gold that he has grabbed from the raids that they've been doing. You saw they just apologized the other day. A video emerged, and many people were condemning us that Emmanuel is AI. But the Zambia army came and said, we apologize that our soldiers beat a small-scale miner like that. We have since taken action. All those things are being done on the head of the Zambia army commander. He should know that there are ramifications. We've had very powerful commanders, even more powerful than him, that have been arraigned in our courts of law and they've been jailed. So this wanton behavior, threatening our national security, threatening our peace and security, threatening our constitutional offices, cannot be allowed. And the dastard act of just going after our electoral and democratic process is totally unforgivable. Someone has written, what if it's the president that has sent him? Well, it even becomes grave. It even becomes grave. We have a democratic process in our country. So the behavior of these two persons need to be... Solochi seems to have calmed down when we named him. We exposed this corruption, what he was doing with the ZNS, ego milling, the theft that they were doing there with FRA, and the illegal deployment of soldiers that he was trying to do with the Electoral Commission. When he was put on the spot, he realized there were so many eyes on him. And in this particular election, he has somehow retreated. But we've seen the Zambia Army Commander step up in the illegalities and conduct what they're doing. And this rogue executive director, Boyd Kayula, who is harassing people, he has cooked up this militia story like he has cooked up on the previous stories. And that is why, when we they infiltrated the Tonse Alliance, the Tonse Pamosi Alliance. They infiltrated it so much. Like, who made the decision to take our young people for training in Russia instead of South Africa? It was for this day that when we are calling for help, people are telling you that you have Russian links. The Tonse Alliance is also highly compromised. There are certain actions that were done. You know, they were trying to set up a solid, proper PVT, and, you know, they criminalized that process and locked up Bernard Kamba. There are certain things that happened there. But but there's been weak links inside Tonse Pamosi Alliance to cause the chaos that you are seeing. Some things were pre-engineered so that, you know, because the president has had an assessment since 2 months ago when Brian Mundule and Makebi came on the scene, that the political scene had totally changed. Before 2 months ago, the race was actually without anyone. President Hakainde Hichilema was going to win. But when at the last minute Brian Mundule and Makebi Zulu came, and there was just that sudden shift, and reports were given to the president that he would likely lose elections. You could see how he concentrated in certain areas, some places going 2, 3, 4 times. He was working from reports where they told him that those were places of weaknesses. We want to open the phone lines. That's why I gave you a lot of time mulande point, so that at the same time. So the raid on Brian Mundule, we were privileged. He was here in the morning for the breakfast show. He explained they came from the African Union. There were a delegation from meeting the African Union. Bishop Trevor Mwamba, George Sanga, our presidential affairs officer. You know, Patrick Mwansa, who's been working, you know, with logistics in the office, and Mutoto Kafuaya, you know, and I'm so grieved about Honorable Mutoto Kafuaya. I'm so grieved. He's such a gentle giant. He's actually taller than me, so we call him a gentle giant. He's so tall, so huge, but so gentle. And you know his politics. His politics were never malicious. His politics were always issue-based, policy-based. He's not one who would strike you that was malicious against President Hakainde Hichilema or any other. But he was shot twice, and not with a pistol, with a military-grade weapon, because those commandos didn't have your taka-taka weapon when they stormed, and shot twice. All of us, you know our fears around that. And despite the pleas by Honorable Brian Mundule asking the soldiers to prioritize, even if he was being beaten, being stepped on, being dragged on, Mundule was pleading for Mutoto Kafuaya, who was bleeding profusely. Take him to the hospital. Take him to the hospital. Take him to the hospital. They didn't hear to his plea. And all this is arising from fake intelligence, from Boyd Kayula, very ambitious. He's got the ear of the president and he's misleading a frightened president. He's providing solutions that will harm this country, that are unconstitutional, that are illegal, that are brutal, that may harm this country for a long time. Because kings are troubled. Bible scholars, for you who go to church, when Jesus was born, a day-old Jesus, and King Herod was told by his seers that a king is born. What did King Herod do? King Herod said, kill every child below the age of 5. He didn't even want to gamble. He wanted, if the information had reached him late, he wanted not to take chance. The seers, indo shishako shali mona, ulubuto lwachinja kwafyalwa imfumu. And King Herod ordered the killing of everyone, every child, every son that was below the age of 5. That's what happens to kings. They are so unsettled when their power has been taken away. Even, can you imagine a baby Jesus threatening a king on the throne? And I don't know how many kids children died. You have the similar story, you know. A savior has been born. He's going to be born in this season in Egypt. Who will let the people go? Who will let my people go? The seers for Pharaoh saw, they said, kill every child below the age of 5. So when President Hakainde Hichilema has been told, a president has been born, another president, Mundule, will likely take over. We are looking at reports from Northern, from Rapula, from Lusaka, from Copperbelt, even from Southern Province, Mr. President, people will not turn up. Look at the Herod and his response. Look at the Pharaoh and his response. And this path for students of history, you see how they react. Then you have a Boyd Kayula, very ambitious rogue intelligence officer, feeding the president with false information, with false conspiracies. All of a sudden, Chester, our musician, now is a criminal. Ambassador Martha Lungu, these are now criminals, members of the militia. Bishop Trevor Mwamba, now these are militia members, according to Boyd Kayula. And then you have a corrupt, accused Zambia Army commander who's just looking for his seat and the amenities that are provided to him. And Secretary to Cabinet, Mkalambawandi Patrick Kangwa, you know, I don't know whether to feel sorry for him because he has had the best training. He's Catholic. You know, he's been an administrator for a long time. I worked with him very well at Cabinet Office. He was then head of DMMU, was not even at the level of permanent secretary at the time. It was just a departmental head. He was head for a long time. He had been appointed by Rupia Banda. And he's been a respected figure in the sports fraternity. To see his conduct, the way we saw him during the demise of the late President Edgar Lungu, and reading that statement. No, we can do better. We can do better. All of a sudden, our party cadres are militia members with high-grade weapons. Party cadre, we don't want to stuck on them. No, but that party cadre, if he's seen around the brand Mundule, those are militias. According to the small mind of Boyd Kayula, because it's frightening a president that has possibly lost an election and a president that's desperate to retain power. What has Mundule done? All Mundule did is to campaign and win this election. He received favor from the people of Zambia. That's his crime. He's not a militia leader. He has not put any forces together. He has not done anything illegal. In fact, he was very conscious of all the 54 rallies he held and meetings. None of them did he occasion the violence. The violence came from the police and the violence came from the UPND cadres. Even in the polling station where cadres are marching, burning, destroying election material, none of them are reported to belong to Tonse or Pamosi Alliance. You saw Shala in Kabwe, where Brian has had commanding lead and where he swept the 3 seats in Kabwe and the presidential vote. And when the people came to change, Shala from Kabwe, he didn't say, can the party cadres come, we fight with these 3 vehicles that have come with these people to come and change the results. He didn't. In all this process, the admirable conduct of Brian Mundule and Makebi Zulu has been very good. When after the traumatic experience, he has seen his friend, one of his best ally, Mutoto Kafwaya, shot and possibly shot dead. They take him, they harass him. The president has so much pressure when the information leaks out that they have to release Brian Mundule and his family to immediately release him. When he found a phone call within 10 minutes Brian didn't call for the people of Zambia to rise. I asked him here, where are you? We bring people to see you. In his entire interview, unresearched, unguarded, in a traumatic state, Brian Mundule didn't call for violence. He called for peace. He called for responsibility. He kept on saying he has done nothing wrong. And the attack on him was totally unjustified. You saw how I probed him. Who else was there? He said, just my usual bodyguards. My usual bodyguard, Mwalimu Shiba, Chandanaba Nankwe Bari Panse. How can... He spoke peace. What is your last word? He spoke peace the entire time. If Brian is power hungry, if Brian is leading a militia, when we had the attention of the country after he was released, after there was international and local attention, if Brian had called for the people of Zambia to rise, they could have risen. He chose not to. In fact, he used something that I admire him for. He says, what kind of a president will I be to rule over ashes? That's a high mark of responsibility. What kind of a president will I be ruling over ashes? What he meant is if he said, they are stealing election, be on the street. President Ichilema was going, and the Zambia Army commander, the corruption accused Zambia Army commander, we are going to abuse our military resources to harm our citizens. Brian refused to do that. Even if any other person in that position would have been tempted. And today you have Patrick Kangwa and this Boyd Kayula cooking up stories that we have militias in our country. What kind of irresponsibility is that? No, Vanessa. We all love our country. We all love our country so much, and we just want the best of our country. The PVTs that show that Brian Mundule is leading, I had Sishua here for 2 hours, and he has repeated that information on the various platforms. Yesterday he was with PALU, this Pan-African Lawyers Association, PALU. They held a solidarity Zoom meeting for Zambians, and many of you joined. Linda Kasonde was one of the speakers, Sishua, and many key Zambians participated in that process. And to the BBC and here, Sishua demonstrated that the 4 PVTs, credible PVTs, have been done, and they're all showing that Brian Mundule has won these elections by 51%, the other one by 53%, the other one by 54%. There's even an optimistic one by 58%. But there is a decision by the president to literally overturn this election. And this is why you saw the deployment of soldiers across the country. Civic centers were taken over. Results were wantonly changed without due regard whether you are the G20 or not. And where you produced the G20, they confiscated it and locked you up for having illegal documents or something like that. The pinnacle of transparency in our electoral process is the G20, because the G20 is your audit trail. What we signed at polling station, we won't say if we were UPND, by Citizen First, by NRPUP, by Socialist Party, and ECZ staff. If we ever to sign, that's what the G20 does. That audit trail document is now highly sought after. And intelligence, police have been deployed to confiscate, get, grab, lock up. In Kanyama, our young boys just made a mistake and said, but here are the signed G20 by your officers. That here, they were rounded up, the G20 grabbed from them, and they've been locked up in Kanyama police station. And that's a pattern everywhere. So, what has Brian Mundule and Makebi Zulu done? What has Bishop Mwamba and George Sanga done? What has sometimes when we are, giving our editorial, hello, caller, please tell us your name and where you're calling us from and make your contribution.
First of all, this is David Moyowambo Mongu.
Yes, David.
To me, it's not a contribution. Today, I want to ask you a question. If you're not comfortable answering it, you can call me when you're out of air. My question is a very simple one. Given the current situation, we've all seen what has happened. I'm not going to repeat what has happened. We all know what has happened. So now, let's moving forward. I want to know your position. What do you think? I know it's collective, but I wanted to know what your position is going forward.
Okay.
What are our options? What options do we have?
I'll give you the options. I was here. I kept on urging you to go and vote. I kept on urging you to protect your vote. I kept on urging you to form a polling station committees. You obliged. We will discuss that. You turned out to vote. Massive Lusaka, Copper Belt, Mwale Umfwa. We are very glad. You know, we had massive turnout. Luapula Northern. Don't believe the Adama is out. Don't believe them. Neko Mwale Monak Southern Province. I don't know how many videos we have, of Southern Province where people were saying, "Habantu bali kwi 14 hours takuli queue kuchoma." Livingstone, you heard the ladies that were in Livingstone saying, "This is not Livingstone. Livingstone, you stay on the line. You'll be voting late into the night. Choma, Monze, Mazabuka." So, fidabale verenga vaisi zetama turn out 70-80% ya fumine kuisa mwantu wa kwalesa. Kwa tuwalewe pavana, And you have places like Chingola. Brian is leading by 39,000. By 39, mwafumiyako almost 20,000 votes. Kufumiyako abantu 20,000, 10,000 mwabafumiyako abantu. Walubira kwisa. My point is, we asked you to vote. We asked you to turn out. And we asked you to protect the vote. For the first time, I've never seen in an election where so many G20s are flying. Our people obliged. So in the event that this election has been stolen, what do we do? Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from and make your contribution.
Yeah,
Yoto Aishako.
Dana ine never baka wepano anonymous.
Anonymous.
Ine number 1 ocho tulefo sana. Chakoba mutuwebeko bushe the way forward to alash tanishani because abantu nga twalekera bifine abantu tapali fo bala mwana kwa chidibya bazambia ni bonse tabakweta amano so na ifo tubalanga ati fifentu na ifo tatemenwe echa number 1 echa number 2 ukukundu ku southern kumyabo twalishi bako up to z ukulingana kutundu mwenzo ko bapunda konse kuna mwala ni kwisa munango mamoso maleputa pali okuta twaishiba eko tubombela sana tapali eko tusha musenda kwefya kusenda malaisi tulamu kusenda ko tapali apashala tapashani tibanganda twaka mukamu utundu mwenzi abantu nga bafula sana bafuma kweko balanda ma 5,000 and 10,000 inisha abantu nabafula nomba efe tule umfwa pia na tutapuisha sana so please twapapata twafweni because abantu kuya kwena takwaba all of this time ba southern tabavote takwali amavote afumine ko fyabu fi pa choma centro nalikwata pruro ulipo owa epo alina pakuvotesha aza ponda ta pruro kulota paya bavotera abantu alipa enyala PUP tabafumine because pachoma centro pa center twashita combine ama result yonse almost 7,000 yandishani yafi ashirelanda ipatifwe na tukata almost 3,000 bena batutsirako badina kwa almost 7,000 batukwisa mukumfu ama result alifu mapo achipapa sana lelo kuntumina funya chuma mulefuna chiramiwa nomba watu na batutapuisha so please kwa papa idiyashi kiperera papene idiyashi ababantu balaberesha ababantu balatuberesha please kwa papa da bantu akaendete charo chawo chino bakuti bakaende baletu people bafwa.
Let me take the last call, then I finish my thoughts. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from and make your contributions.
My name is Mwansa. I'm calling from
Yes, my brother, make your contribution.
Yes, sir. So you say that this has been a conspiracy cooked up by the president's intelligence. Well, my question would be, do you think that the people that are surrounding Brian Mundule are easy to spin, the narrative is easy to spin around them? And perhaps to mention some notable figures, J.J. Banda, Lily Mutams, although they're not necessarily in the inner circle, but those are the people that are identified as the foremost speakers for Brian Mundule. When you hear some of the rhetoric coming from these people, it's very clear that it is divisive rhetoric, and therefore it is easy to spin certain narratives on the basis of these people. Wouldn't it be wise for Brian to maybe surround himself with more level-headed people, maybe like yourself and others? Because what the narrative is on the ground is that when people listen to these people speak, what seems to be on behalf of Brian, and even the unfortunate statement that was perhaps misinterpreted when it was made by Bingwell concerning self-defense and being ready to kill or die, it seems to me that the way forward for Brian is to surround himself with more level-headed people. Because as long as these people are surrounding Brian, the narrative will not change. And it will even be easier for the international community to believe the lies that you say are being cooked up by the president's intelligence. I submit.
Thank you very much. So have we opened the phone lines? Because now the phones are tap. Hello, callers. Welcome to today's broadcast and make your contribution.
I've only got one word to remember.
Yeah.
Money talks, bullshit walks. That's exactly that president has done, together with all his puppies. Full stop.
Thank you very much. Okay, let me finish my... Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from and make your contribution.
Good evening, Your Excellency.
Good evening.
Yes, in the first place, it is not something that everyone hasn't seen. Everyone who has got eyes, actually, even if your eyes are closed, you can be able to see that these are shameful elections, to say the least. You know, where have you seen a situation whereby Moba Mwamba, you got 250 votes? Me, I get 55. Somebody put 4 there, it comes 455. Now people can even now adopt it that maybe we can become very rich. If I give you 20 kwacha, I just have to add 400 so that it becomes 450 to 420 kwacha. Which they are calling now Nyampande formula. You know, you might even laugh as if this is a laughing matter. Where have you seen such kind of election? Probably you might bring that clip of what was happening in, is it Muzanzara, where there's Nyampande, where that lady was tabulating how the figures were changing.
Okay, let's watch that. And
I've
seen people asking for that. Let's watch that.
And then you go to, is it
let's watch that. Let's watch that. Yeah, let's watch that.
Muzanzara constituency. We are not satisfied with the figures on the summary given to us by ECZ and the figures on our Gen 20s that we collected from our polling stations. So as you can see here, we have, we'll start with Nyampande 2, Nyampande primary stream 2. If we come to Nyampande primary stream 2, our Gen 20s are saying Brian Mundule has 276, UPND has 59. But if we come to this summary here, we have in Nyampande 2, we have Hakainde Ichilema 359 instead of 59 that's on our Gen 20. If you come to Brian Mundule, they've maintained the same figure, which is 276. So the second one is Nyampande stream 3. If you come to Nyampande stream 3, we have Brian Mundule with 246 and 247, and UPND with 51. But if we come to the summary here, Nyampande stream 3, we have Hakainde Ichilema with 351 instead of 51, and we have Brian Mundule with the maintained figure, which is 247. The next one also, we have Nyampande stream 4. The Gen 20 says 296 and 59 for UPND. But if we come to our summary here, it's saying Nyampande stream 4, it's saying 409 instead of 59 for Hakainde Ichilema, and 296 for Brian Mundule has been maintained. So you go to Nyampondolo here. Nyampondolo says Brian Mundule 312. Then we have Hakainde Ichilema with 46. But if we come to the summary here, Nyampondolo is saying Hakainde Ichilema 346 and Brian Mundule maintained with 312. We also have Ray. Okay, let me just do this. For Matunga, I think we have Ray here. Ray 1 and 2 also have the same issues. So we have Ray 1, Ray stream 1. The Gen 20 says Brian Mundule 330.
Thank you very much. The lady did very well to compare the results that were obtained, from totaling centers, and in the result management document, the results that were submitted to Lusaka, fake results, and we've seen more evidence of that, where they are shaving off sometimes up to 10,000 votes, or like the case of Kalomo, where they're adding up to 10,000 votes. And you see the results at the totaling center. And in the result management document being sent to ECZ, they add a 10,000. 10,000, I want to win 10,000. Either Mawafumiyako or Mawabikapo. So that election is a sham. Someone was saying, are you watching the results? I said, I'm not. Because most of them are not credible. They are a sham. The Gen 20s that have been totaled up demonstrate that those elections are. That's why ECZ is not allowing proper question, proper evidence. When Celestine tried to present the Gen 20 they had from a constituency presented, his accreditation was revoked. When Roosevelt Tonga went to ECZ and said, is it possible that you can suspend the announcement of these results? Because all the announcement of these results are disputed. And, in the result management release, how it is done, is that there is a verification at the National Totaling Center. So before ECZ commissioners come to sit to the podium, they will call your stakeholders, and then you will verify together the results. Then they walk in and announce the results. That is not happening. And our agents at Mulungushi are made to sit in the audience. Then they are not allowed to question. And when they question, you saw the young man that came in pajamas, so contemptuous. The police couldn't touch him. All he had to say is that he's UPND or UPND Alliance. No one could touch him. He went, directed an electoral board, which is a constitutional body. By law, no one is supposed to direct them. He directed them what to do. And they implemented after that. They are not allowing political questions as directed by a UPND cadre. So let me just answer those questions. Mwantu wakwaleza ina rilanda mwesa pa platform pano mwilaleta kweli ashita kwa tayali oidia kwa lili oidia kwa jeje banda that is a pact I have with you, is that come to my podium, pick the topic I'm discussing, and let us discuss that topic. Please don't bring any other person in my discussion. Ishamanako ba times of Zambia why batifile mbele ba dedime utafiri buino. Your choice is your choice. You walk to why berenga times, why berenga Daily Mail, why berenga ZMBC, why berenga news diggers. Yo bakoswe bara tukasa na bakoswe. That Koswe thing is very bad. Why are you reading it? So don't come and resolve the issues of Koswe on my page. So please, Mwanjele Lako, aba nandi na wefe balechita. Sometimes I'm discussed at these platforms, and I send them messages. Don't allow me to be discussed. I think all of us have a topic that we are discussing. So that would be my appeal. But the principal issue you're asking, let me go to the principal issue, that can the president review the people around him? Obviously, you have to forgive the Tonse Pamoze alliance. First, you have to forgive even Makebi Zulu. He has just come, won an election. He was just familiarizing himself. We were deep in an election. That Pamoze alliance comes to Tonse, also which was just gobbled up together. There has been no time for institutional mechanism, institutional jailing, and proper. This was an ad hoc arrangement, both from Tonse and Pamoze. That is why we couldn't even resolve the issue of two candidates. That has cost us. Look at Mandevu. Although the other, the NRPUP had won, but look, Jean is very strong and Banda is very strong. That undermined our candidate. It was never resolved. But you can attribute it that these are colleagues that have come together just in the last 2 months. And you have to forgive them. They've done the best. In fact, we should celebrate them. Under 2 months, they're at the verge of taking power. Under 2 months. So I think something, for me, let's look at the positive. There'll be a postmortem. They review what needs to be done better, and they'll come up with systems and better way. But this was an ad hoc, a child born in an election and told to run a 42-kilometer marathon, where the Ngungis and the Kitiongos that ran the marathon for 10 years, a child was born in the race and told to compete with these people. So for me, Tonse Pamoze Alliance did a wonderful job. Brian Mundule Makebi Zulu did a wonderful job. So instead of celebrating that, let's not go to the weaknesses. Remember when I was exposing the Zambia Army commander and this rogue Boyd Kayula, and how he's alarming the president with false information, where now they've put us in this perilous situation, is that there have been weaknesses, infiltrations, and other things, even in our camp. I said I can't discuss that because I can't discuss my own camp. So that is for post-mortem. It's not that there haven't been weaknesses on our side. There have been weaknesses, and I said that at the beginning. Mwabantu Bakwalesa, I saw another video for Vowden Findlay's brother. He's still counting down. Vowden Findlay hasn't had access to the family and to the lawyers. Martha Lungu and Hannah Israel Katontola were released. These were in the administrative office of Honorable Brian Mundule. Sebastian Copeland, something traumatic happened to him. He's having a cup of tea with Emmanuel Nkoma in Woodlands. There's a cafe just next to the police there, and a horde of policemen came in anti-riot gear, in anti-riot motor vehicles, and stormed that cafe and picked Sebastian Copeland and Emmanuel Nkoma. Mrs. Emmanuel Nkoma, Reverend Emmanuel Nkoma, who's a reverend and runs a church in Durban, is still crying for Emmanuel Nkoma. It's been 8 days. And Emmanuel Nkoma hasn't been given bond, hasn't appeared in court. He's still kept in a hole somewhere. We have Kenneth Kamba, remains detained. We have Fraser Mson, the former PS. These were colleagues that were trying to set up a PVT. They criminalize this Boyd Kayelu, criminalize the PVT. They are trying to recruit former soldiers to man the polling stations, They think we are not aware of what they do, and they crack down on Fraser Msonda and Kenneth Kamba. We have the sad loss of Stereos Shula Sadanes. That murder is connected to the politics because of the issues that we had discussed earlier. We have Danienga, and congratulations, Danienga. Despite the harassment, we understand he's been declared winner. But, we've congratulated people here and we wake up the following day, they will have just sent some other people to change the results. And, you know, our congratulations have been short-lived. But Danny Yenga's security young man, Brian Mwila, famously called Baba, this is the first time we saw the use of the military in an insidious operation. When I explained it here, people said, no, maybe you're just mistaking the police. So Brian Mwila was the first one where Danny Yenga's campaign center was stormed by 2 Land Cruisers of soldiers, commandos, and they picked Baba, Brian Mwila, and he remains. These are the people that are saying militia. I'm a party cadres, but aba security. You know, all of a sudden they are militias. This is what this Boyd Kayelu has classified them in his rogue reports to the president. We have those kids that were, those members of our security that were arrested in Chipata, Rick Chambawilo, Thomas Mvula, Peter Mwaba, Rickson Piri. Now we have the latest George Kunda, Bishop. I saw an alert here. Someone was calling me. Probably there'll be a statement from here because that's an international bishop. And then you, in the morning, if you were listening to a broadcast, there's Wamayo, who is a cousin to Bishop Mwamba. She is a freedom fighter. You know, in her old age, she sought the phone and she called. It was such an emotional call for those that listened to it in the morning. What do we do before I open the phone lines? What do we do? An election has been stolen, what do you do? The law provides for remedies. So number one is a legal process. Is that Honorable Brian Mundule should assemble a team of lawyers and they should gather the evidence. The law gives up to 14 days to challenge the results that to be announced by ECZ. Diplomatic, that's another route. People like us should call people we know who should, at the level of the president, speak to the president, highlight these challenges. They have people on the ground, they have embassies on the ground. The embassies can give similar reports, status report. They don't have to listen to Emmanuel Mwamba. There can be a status report from any embassy. That's another avenue. So there's a legal avenue, diplomatic avenue. There's a stakeholders engagement. The Council of Elders, the church, you know, the seniors in our country, former leaders that have seen the path where our country is. Not senior leaders, but like Vanevas Mumba, you know, to the country in the name of politics. Yet he's a man of God who held such a high position, but he has become part of the destruction of our nation. So the other one is stakeholder engagement, where you now engage stakeholders, the people that can reach the president, the people that can reach some of his close people, the people that can speak to the country and provide wisdom. Then there is mass action. You voted. You protected the vote. You must protect the results. Those are the 4 actions. You can do either of them. What I'm seeing is Zambians are saying, let me just take this call, just in case there's something I've missed.
That Mr. Brian Mundule, presidential candidate.